Hello and welcome to my Specialization Introduction and Outdoor Content Guide for the Restoration Druid in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. If you haven't watched the primer video for this series, I recommend that you do that now. There'll be a link in the description below, and that will just get you up to speed on everything we're doing in these videos. Now that we're here on our Resto Druid. All of our action bars are cleared and ready to go. If we jump into our talents, these are the talents you can select in order to fulfill the conditions laid out in the primer video. Now, before we get started any further, I want to make it very clear that this is an outdoor open world content guide for the Restoration Druid, which means that it's not a dungeon or raid healing guide. We're going to be focused on the most efficient things to do so that we can get out there, quest, farm, and things like that on what is otherwise a healing spec. So we will be kind of ignoring some of those abilities or talents that would make this specialization really good in a dungeon or a raid, because we are looking to pick stuff that's going to enhance our kind of solo play style out there leveling in the open world. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And with that said, we can get into our spell book. We're going to start organizing our spells, but first we're going to talk about forms. So as a druid, you're able to shapeshift. By default, you start in your regular form, which is whatever you created your character as. And you have the ability to shapeshift into different animal forms and things like that. As a Restoration Druid, you have your default form, and that's actually where you will cast most of your spells, most of your healing spells. You also have the ability to shift into a bear form. This will increase your armor by 220%, your stamina by 25%, grant you protection from polymorph effects, and increase the threat generation that you create. This is the tanking form for the druid, so if you need to mitigate some damage or you want to tank something, you go bear. Next, you have the cat form. This changes you into a cat. This will increase your auto attack damage by 40%. Increase your movement speed by 30%, grant you protection from polymorph effects, and reduced fall damage. This is the form you go into when you want to deal a lot of melee damage. And then finally we have travel form. Travel form will be different depending on the situation you're in. If you're in an area where you can fly, you'll have a flying form. If not, you'll have a land form that runs. If you're in the water, you will have a water animal form. All these forms basically grant you increased movement speed in that particular setting. Alright, so now that we've gone over shapeshifting and the druid forms, let's get into our spell book, and we're going to quickly talk about how the action bars work for a druid. So, if you place an ability into your top row, your side row, or your small bottom side row, then no matter what form you're in, you will be able to see those abilities and click on them. However, if you place an ability in your left bottom area where your 1 to 11 keys are, then that ability is specific to whatever form you're in at the time. So right now I have bark skin and I'm not in any form. So this is available when I'm in my regular form. If I go to bear form, you'll see that it disappears. It's not there anymore. Cat form, also not there. Travel form and your regular form share this bar, so anything you put on your regular bar will also be there for travel form. So if you want to make sure that you can see all your abilities properly, then you need to make sure that if you have an ability you want to place on the bottom bar and it's usable by multiple forms, that you put it on every single one of those bars. The easiest way to do that is go through, set up your bars in your regular form, thinking about, okay, what can I use? Then go to your bear form, put all your bear abilities on, then your cat, and so on. Now, for the purposes of this video, we're not going to be setting up every action bar. We're only going to be setting up the ones we need in order to do our rotations and things like that for open world content. Alright, so let's get into our spell book and start sorting everything out. I'm not going to go, really into depth on all these abilities, but I will give you at least a basic description so you can know what the ability does and understand why it's being placed in the category that it is. So we'll start off with Bark Skin. This is a defensive cooldown ability. It reduces damage we take and prevents us from having our spells delayed. Next we have Dash. This is a combat utility ability. You activate this, it puts you into cat form and then gives you 60% increased movement speed for 10 seconds as long as you stay in cat form. Efflorescence, I think I said that right. This is a healing over time ability. It creates a blossom at the target location, and this creates kind of an AoE ground effect of healing. Generally speaking, we're probably not going to use this too much in outdoor content, so we'll put it under our combat utility on the right hand side. Entangling Roots is a crowd control ability that will root the target in place. If they take damage, then that may break the effect. Frenzied Regeneration requires bear form, so we'll switch over to bear and we'll put that down there. We'll put it on the end of the bar here, so these are going to be our cooldowns for bear. Frenzied Regeneration heals you for 24% of your maximum health over 3 seconds. We also have Growl, which is a bear form ability. It's the Druid Taunt. We have Hibernate. This is a crowd control ability that puts an enemy to sleep, but it only works on Beast and Dragon Kid, so it has kind of limited use. Next we have Innervate. This is a combat utility ability that we probably won't use too often, but you can infuse a friendly healer with energy, allowing them to cast spells without spending mana for 12 seconds. Mana is not really a big issue when you're playing in the open world. Next we have Iron Bark. This is a defensive cooldown. It will reduce damage taken by 20%. Iron Fur is a bear-only ability, so we'll put that down here. It increases your armor. Next up, we have Life Bloom. So this is an ability that we will include as a combat utility ability. It does a pretty big heal over 15 seconds, and when it expires or is dispelled, it does a second heal. Next, we have Mangle. That's a bear form ability. We'll put that there. Alright, Moonfire is part of our core rotation. Nature's Cure is a combat utility ability that we're probably not going to use very often. It removes all magic, curse, and poison effects from a friendly target. Prowl will put us into cat form, put us into stealth. So it's a nice combat utility ability, or we can activate it, before combat in order to sneak around. Rebirth is a combat utility ability that will allow us to resurrect a friendly target while we're in combat, something we're probably not going to do that often in the open world, so we'll put that over here on the right side as well. Regrowth is a combat utility ability. This does an initial large heal and then a heal over time buff on the target. Rejuvenation is also a combat utility ability we will keep. This will heal us, or our target, for a pretty good amount over 15 seconds. Revitalize, we'll go over here in our miscellaneous section. This is our mass res. It'll resurrect all dead party members, and we can't use it in combat, so it goes in our miscellaneous section. Revive is our single target resurrection ability with the same rules. Shred is an ability for cat form, so we'll put that down here. Okay. Solar Wrath is part of our core rotation. Soothe is a combat utility ability we probably won't use much that will dispel enrage effects. Sunfire is part of our core rotation. Swift Min is a combat utility ability that will keep. It will instantly heal the target for a large amount. Teleport and Moonglade will teleport us to the Moonglade. It's something we'll do outside of combat, so that goes in our miscellaneous section. Thrash can be used in both cat form and bear form, so we're going to put it on both those bars. Next, we have Tranquility. This is a defensive cooldown ability. It does a massive amount of healing to all targets in its range. It's a big AoE heal. Next, we have Ursol's Vortex. This will conjure a vortex of wind, reducing movement speed of all enemies. It's a crowd control ability as well. And finally, we have Wild Growth. Wild Growth is a combat utility ability that we can use to heal up to 6 injured targets in 30 yards. Alright, so that's it. As you can see, there is not a lot to the core rotation of the Resto Druid if you're out in the open world trying to do damage. Mainly, all you're going to do is you're going to go up to your target. You're going to make sure you cast Moonfire. This is going to deal a little bit of damage to the target, then put a damage over time debuff onto that target. Then you will cast Sunfire. This will deal a little bit of damage, some damage over time, but it will also pulse out and hit other targets. And then you will start spamming a Solar Wrath until your target dies. So if we look at Moonfire, you're going to see we get just the 1 damage there, or damage to 1 target. When we add in Sunfire, that's going to splash over to this target here and hit them. And then we would Solar Wrath and deal damage this way. And that is the core rotation for the Resto Druid. Obviously, not a lot to it, not very exciting. We need to put Moonfire. That's usable in bear form, so we'll put that down there. So how do we turn this into something we can use out in the open world? Well, that comes down to our talent choices. So let's get into the talents, set up our build that's good in outdoor content, and talk about why it is good. Okay, this is the build that I recommend you use on a Restoration Druid in outdoor content. We're going to hit each of these talents and talk about what it does and why it's included in our build. So first off, we have Prosperity. So Swift Mend now has 2 charges and its cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. So this gives us the ability to use Swift Mend, which is our instant cast, really large heal several times. Like every time we need it, we should have it up. We should be able to cast it. It's got a much shorter recharge now. So this powerful healing ability is just available to us more often. Next, we have Wild Charge. And we're going to go ahead and add Wild Charge in. We're running out of room over here, so let's go ahead and move one of these off. We'll move our Efflorescence over to our sidebar here. Wild Charge is a mobility talent that changes based on the shapeshift form that you're in. So if you don't have a form, then you can select a target, and this will cause you to fly towards the target. If you are in bear form, you charge the enemy. If you're in cat form, you'll jump behind them and daze the target. Travel form, you will leap 20 yards forward, and that'll give you some increased speed. And when you are in aquatic form, you get increased swim speed for 5 seconds. So it's a versatile movement ability on a 15-second cooldown. Lots of nice utility. Next, we have Feral Affinity. So this is really where we're going to change up our rotation, and we're going to make it a little more interesting to get out there and do some questing. With Feral Affinity, we have chosen to take on the aspect of the Feral Specialization Druid. On each Druid, you can choose to pick an affinity from one of the specializations that you're not currently playing as. So we're picking Feral. This gives us 15% increased movement speed. We also learn a bunch of cat form abilities that we're going to be talking about here pretty soon. Next, we have Mighty Bash. This is a 5-second stun that's usable in all shapeshift forms. Gives us a nice crowd control ability, so we can put that down here. Cultivation, when our Rejuvenation, which is our regular old heal over time ability, heals the target below 60% health, it applies Cultivation to the target, healing them for 379 over 6 seconds. So when we cast Rejuvenation on ourselves to heal, if we are low, we will get some additional healing, so that will help us to survive. Stone Bark reduces the cooldown of Iron Bark by 15 seconds, and it increases healing from your heal over time effects by 20%. So now Iron Bark, which is a defensive cooldown that reduces all damage by 20%, will now have a shorter cooldown, and it will also increase the effect of our heal over time abilities as well. So a nice defensive tool. And then finally, Photosynthesis. While your Life Bloom, which is our instant cast ability, is on yourself, all your periodic heals heal 15% faster. Now this is good because it means that if we cast Life Bloom and we already have some heal over time abilities up, they're going to heal us a lot faster. It makes it much more of like a bursty kind of healing instead of this slow, passive, steady heal over time, which is probably what we need in the open world, because if we're casting heals on ourselves, we're probably in a situation where, you know, we're fighting a lot of enemies or we're not sure if we're going to live. So being able to cast Life Bloom on ourselves and accelerate that healing process is going to help us out a lot. Also, if you happen to cast Life Bloom on an ally, your periodic heals on that ally have a 5% chance to cause it to bloom. Okay, so let's get in and talk about feral affinities. So with this build, we are totally changing our basic rotation because whenever we can be, we want to be in cat form. So as part of our feral affinity, we gained access to Rake, Rip, Ferocious Bite, and Swipe. So when we go out into the open world, we actually want to, as much as possible, be playing in cat form. Remember, this is the form that gives us the increased auto attack damage, movement speed, and reduced falling damage. It also just happens to be the Druid specialization that does the most single target melee kind of damage. Now, the Feral Druid has 2 resources available to it. And I say Feral Druid because that's essentially, we're kind of playing a gimped Feral Druid that has a lot of extra healing. The Cat Form Druid has 2 resources available. You have energy. You start combat with 100 energy. You spend it on abilities, and it will passively regenerate. You use those abilities to generate your second resource, which is called combo points. You start with 0 and you can build up to 5 combo points. You then spend your combo points on powerful finishing moves. So now, instead of, you know, our cast Moonfire, cast Sunfire, spam Solar Wrath until the target dies, however long that takes, we're instead going to start combat in cat form. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up with this move called Rip. Rip costs 35 energy. It rakes the target for a little bit of damage, then applies a damage over time debuff to the target that is a bleed. If you happen to be stealthed by hitting Prowl and going into stealth, when you use this ability, it will stun the target for 4 seconds and deal 100% increased damage. This ability gives us a combo point. So we want to cast Rake on the enemy, get them bleeding, get our combo point. Then we want to cast Shred in a single target situation. Shred will deal damage to the target. It deals 20% increased damage if the target is bleeding. So that's why we want to cast Rake first, because then when we start casting Shred, we'll get that extra damage. If we cast Shred while we're stealth, it deals 50% increased damage and has double the chance to critically strike. Shred will also give us combo points. If we're in a situation where we have multiple enemies nearby, then we can cast Swipe. Swipe will just hit all the enemies, give us a combo point. So once we've built up those combo points, what we want to do is we want to spend them on finishing moves. Now we have 2 finishing moves available. The first one is called Rip. It costs 30 energy, and it basically puts a damage over time debuff that is a bleed on the target. The amount of damage that bleed will do is based on the number of combo points that you spend on it. So if you spend 1 combo point, we'll do 492 damage. If we spend 5 combo points, we'll do 2,460 damage. So more combo points is better. Lower combo points is not quite as strong, but the duration remains the same, and that is important because that means you'll have a bleed on your target for your shred if for some reason you miss putting your rake back up in time. The other finishing ability we have that will use combo points is called Ferocious Bite. It costs 25 energy. It also will use 1 to 5 combo points depending on how many you have. It does damage per combo point and will consume up to 25 additional energy to increase damage by up to 100%. So you want to try to cast Ferocious Bite when you have 25 energy so you can get that double damage in. When used on targets below 25% health, Ferocious Bite will also refresh the duration of your rip on the target. So as your target gets low, you can cast Ferocious Bite and re-up that duration of rip. Now this should work as soon as you cast Ferocious Bite, because your general rotation is going to be Rake into Shred till you get 5 combo points. Then you'll cast Rip to get that bleed going. You'll make sure your Rake is still up. Shred all the way up to 5 combo points again, and then cast Ferocious Bite. So let's check that out real quick. If we go up, we can Rake, start casting Shred until we get up to our 5 combo points, and then we will cast Rip, and then we'll go back and make sure our Rake is going. Shred. We're just going to keep casting Shred until we get 5 combo points. And then we're going to cast Ferocious Bite. It does a nice chunk of damage, and it will refresh our rip on our target as well. Now we do have one other ability here, and this is called Thrash. Thrash will deal damage to all nearby enemies, and it will... I think it's bugging out because I put it on here before. Let's put the actual Thrash on here. Oh, okay, it's gone. It disappeared. Alright, so maybe that's a bug, or maybe for some reason when we pick... oh, I know what it was. We were in Guardian Affinity, so we had Thrash, which is usable in cap form, but is not available if you don't have Guardian Affinity. So, ignore that. Those are the abilities. That's the rotation. The one difference there is if you're fighting multiple enemies, you use Swipe instead of Shred. So that's it. That's what we're going to do. We're basically going to try to fight stuff in cat form. It's important to notice that most of our healing abilities are not usable in cat form. So what we're going to have to do is if for some reason we need to heal, we're going to have to cast like our rejuvenation and go back into cat form and start attacking again. So let's talk about the PvP talents you can take if you want to toggle on war mode and mainly focus on PvE content. First off, we have Relentless. This will replace your Honorable Medallion and reduce the duration of incoming crowd control by 20%. It's totally passive. You could set it and forget it. Next is Revitalize. Casting Rejuvenation grants the target 2 charges of Revitalize. Now, in our scenario, we should be casting Rejuvenation on ourselves. And because of... nope, that's a different talent. So we'll be casting it on ourselves, and we'll get this Revitalize, 2 charges. Revitalize will heal the target for 680 after taking a melee critical strike, and increase the duration of Rejuve by 2.6 seconds. So basically, you cast Rejuve on yourself, now you have this ability to get healed if you take a melee critical strike, and you increase the duration of rejuvenation when that happens, so you don't have to put that on yourself quite as much. Next we have Overgrowth. This is a instant ability. I'd probably put this under our defense cooldowns, 45 seconds, and it will apply Life Bloom, Rejuvenation, Wild Growth, and Regrowth's heal over time effect to a target. So this one ability, every 45 seconds, you can push that and get like every heal over time buff that's available to you with the push of one button, and that will probably save you quite a lot. And then finally we have Cyclone. This is a crowd control ability. It tosses the enemy into the air for 6 seconds. which prevents them from doing anything to you, but you also can't do anything to them. But that's okay because you toss the enemy up in the air, you cast your healing spells while they're up there so that you can get yourself back up to full health, and then when they drop back down, you're ready to go right back into damaging that enemy. Okay, so that's it. That's the build. The next step is to take this out into the open world and test it out against some enemies. So I'm going to cut to that, and I will see you there. Alright, so we're here in Suramar City. We're going to fly down and try out this build against a couple different types of enemies. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to shapeshift into our cat form. We want to use Prowl whenever possible. Get that stealth. We're going to go up. We're going to hit our Rip. That's going to stun the target. We're going to shred, work our way up to enough combo points to cast Rip or Ferocious Bite. Now, on a target that you're pretty sure you're going to kill easily, it's best to go ahead and get your Rake in, your Shred, build up to 5 combo points, and then just cast Ferocious Bite. You really don't need to worry about using Rip unless you're fighting a target that you think is going to live for quite a while. So we'll go ahead, Ferocious Bite. We've got multiple enemies, so we can start swiping. This guy doesn't have Rip on him or Rake on him yet, so we want to put that up there. Go right back into shredding him up to 5 combo points and cast Ferocious Bite. Okay, so pretty much like I said, you can kind of ignore Rip until you get to a target that's going to last quite a while. Now this guy can see through our stealth, so there's really no point in stealthing, so we will Rip, shred, Ferocious Bite. Now, something to note about the combo points is that they do carry over from enemy to enemy. So I will show you this. If we, say, take on these guys, right, we go up, we're going to Rip this guy. We can switch over and Rip that guy too, so he'll start bleeding. We can use our swipes, and we'll shred. We've got 5 combo points. Now we can go over to this guy and just Ferocious Bite right away and deal a nice chunk of damage to him. So, don't spend your combo points if you don't need to kill someone, because you can take that over into your next target. So what we're going to do is we're going to gather up a couple of people here. Nothing too crazy because we are on a healer build. We're going to go to cat form. We're going to do our Rip. We're going to start swiping to build that up. We are going to put... Alright, we're going to get out of here, actually. Alright, so we're going to cast Rejuve. We're going to cast Rejuve. Swift Mend. We're going to go to bear form. Save ourselves some damage here. Use our bark skin. Alright, we're just going to try to get moonfires on all these people here. Alright, we're taking a lot of damage. We're going to cast Iron Bark on ourselves. Rejuve. Cast our Life Bloom. Okay, we're just going to run away. We're going to switch to cat form. We're going to try to get to the river in time. And hit our travel form. That's going to put us in this cool seal who has increased movement speed. Man, these guys are chasing us. Alright, let's hit our Rejuve again. Rejuve. Go back in. Ooh, they are chasing us for a long way. Alright, that is the first time I have died in one of these videos, so it had to happen sometime, right? Alright, let's get ourselves out of here. So, as a Restoration Druid, especially if you're doing a demo, try not to take on a whole bunch of enemies at the same time, because you generally don't have the damage for it. However, as you can see, in a pretty single target situation, we do just fine. So, and I think this was the case in my Marksmanship Hunter video as well, you got to play to the strengths of your specialization. So, if we were to want to fight this guy, this was the big high health quest guy we had. Let's go to cat form. Let's go to prowl. Okay, we're gonna Rip this guy. We're gonna start shredding. build up those combo points. And we're just going to pull him away and make sure that nobody else can attack us. Okay. We're going to get our rip onto him. Make sure our rake stays up. We're going to keep building up combo points with shred. Alright, we got 5. We're going to cast our ferocious bite. We can pop out and use our rejuvenation. Go back into cat form. Make sure we keep rake up. Shred. Shred. Go ahead and hit that ferocious bite if we want to. You can hit it a little early if you want. And there we go. So that, and now, once we're done with combat, we're a resto druid, so we can come out and swift min, and we are back at full health. That is the perk to playing a restoration druid and trying to go out there and do the leveling. It's not that you are like a tank class where you can take on a whole bunch of enemies at the same time, but you have no downtime in between enemies. So we can come down here, grab these guys, and we could start just swiping them. And we can actually just swipe them until they're dead. We don't even need to worry about doing anything else. We could put our rake on both of them and then swipe. That way we have the bleeds on there. When we're down to 1, we start shredding again. So rake, shred, we've got a ferocious bite we can cast, and dead. A little bit of health off our bar, but we pop up, we cast our rejuvenation, and we're going to be fully healed up again. Alright, so here's another large target. So prowl, we want to get this rip, or this rake in. Shred, shred, shred. We're going to shred one more time to 5 combo points. Then we're going to cast rip. Alright, then we're going to recast our rake. Shred. And we're going to build this up to 5 combo points again. Or 4, and then we'll ferocious bite. And dead. Alright. Well, like I said, I had to die in one of these videos. So, I hope that this has helped you to understand a little better how you can play the Restoration Druid in an open world context. Hopefully this has given you the confidence to get out there on your own Restoration Druid and, start questing and farming. Try out the specialization, see if you like it, if it's something you want to play for Battle for Azeroth. Remember, once again, this is not a dungeon or raid healing video, or we would have been paying a lot more attention to a lot of these heals. And also just remember, play to your specialization strengths when you're out in the open world. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, whatever you want to do to help encouraging me to keep making these types of videos. I hope you have a good time in Battle for Azeroth, and thank you for watching.